it's Kira and welcome to another video. I'm coming to you on what is a very, very rainy day to talk about a topic which I think is very, very fitting for such a gloomy autumnal day, because as you're watching this video, or at least when it's getting uploaded, it is the 14th of October, which means that we are basically halfway through this month. And in my opinion, this halfway point of the month is the perfect time to get started on all of these spooky, creepy and horror-filled books that are sitting on my shelves. Although of course many people like to start reading their spooky books right at the beginning of October, I felt like I was in more of a cozy autumn mood at the beginning of the month, so I've been reading a murder mystery, and also I've been reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier because I'm hosting a read-along of that book because there is a new Netflix adaptation coming out on the 21st of the month. So I've been hosting that along with Jess from the channel Read by Jess. So the first half of my October has been very much filled up with still quite dark books, but not ones that I would necessarily describe as scary. But now that we are at that halfway point, I feel like I am more than ready to dive into all of the creepy, spooky, and hopefully terrifying books that are sitting on my shelves. But before we get into that main part of the video, can I just express my absolute disappointment about the fact that despite having an extremely extensive collection of mugs, if you watch any of my videos you'll know that I have a ridiculous amount of mugs. I'm almost always holding a different one, except for if it's my friend's one, because that is my most used mug because it's so big. But essentially I have a huge collection of mugs, more mugs than any normal person ever would need, and yet I don't seem to have any spooky, creepy or Halloween themed books at all. There is not a hint of a bat or a spider's web or anything like that. There's absolutely nothing creepy, and I'm really disappointed about that. So the best I could do for this video was this cat mug, because I know people dress up as cats and obviously witches and black cats and all of that kind of stuff, and this is obviously not a black cat and it's not remotely Halloweeny, but it was the best I could do. So clearly I need to go mug shopping again to find myself a Halloween themed mug because it's an essential in my opinion. But for now, we have this cat mug and let's jump straight into my spooky second half of October TBR. So the first book from this TBR that I'm really excited to pick up is one that I actually know very little about, and that's kind of why I'm so excited, because I'm going in completely blind. This is a book that I'm actually only picking up because it is one of the October picks for the Dark Academics book club. That's a book club, if you're not aware, that I host alongside 4 other wonderful booktubers. There's Emma, Mary, Carolyn and Lucy, and together we get together and read books every single month. We usually pick one book and it's often quite dark, and then we have a live show and a Discord chat, and it's really, really fun. But because the theme of the book club is dark academia and generally just all things dark, we decided to make October a little bit of a special month. So we're hosting the Dark Academics Halloween-a-thon. This is a readathon that is taking place in the second 2 weeks of the month, and so we're very, very excited. It officially starts on, I think, Saturday the 17th of October and then goes through until Saturday the 31st, which is of course Halloween itself. And because we're hosting this readathon, we also decided to pick 2 books this month instead of the usual 1. If you want any more information about the Halloween-a-thon, I will link to my announcement video for it down below, so you can go and check it out and see what it is all about, because you still have a few days before it's going to start, so you can definitely join in. There's loads of fun activities going on and it's going to be really, really fun. But essentially, one of the books that we've picked is one that I hadn't ever really intended to read, and it is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Like I said, I know very, very little about this book. I assume it is set in an opera house, and I believe it is about a phantom because pretty much that is what the title tells me. But aside from that, I know nothing about this book, and that is exactly the way I intend to keep it, because actually it's relatively short, and so I feel like the more I know about it going in, the more it's going to spoil the reading experience. I know that lots of people have been enjoying it, and so I'm really, really excited to read it and chat about it with everyone in the Dark Academics book club. The live show for the Dark Academics this month is happening on Halloween itself, which is going to be really, really fun. So I'm really looking forward to reading this book and just finding out what it's all about. So I think this is going to be my first priority from this TBR. Firstly, because I definitely need to read it before the live show, and secondly, because I'm just really intrigued to find out what it's all about. So if you have read this book, definitely let me know your thoughts without giving away anything about the plot, because I'm really intrigued about what this book is really going to delve into, and whether it's like paranormal or more about like someone who has kind of been turned into a phantom by the public view or anything. Like, my mind has no idea what we're going to be getting into, and I'm excited about it. And then, like I said, for the Dark Academics Book Club this month, we decided to pick 2 books instead of 1, which I was very happy about, because although I know absolutely nothing about the Phantom of the Opera, the second book that we picked up is one that I've already read and love, and it is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I read this book last year and fell in love with it. I think it was incredible. I know it's a little bit of an odd book and definitely one that I think divides opinion, but for me it was incredible. I won't give away too much in case you are planning to read it for the Dark Academics Book Club, but in this book we essentially follow our main character, Mary Cat. She is a 19-year-old and yet she comes across very much like a child within this book, and she lives along with her sister Constance and also their uncle Julian. And they are the last 3 surviving members of their family. And many years ago, there was quite a scandal when all of the other family members were killed in a poisoning incident, which has kind of plagued the family ever since. They're kind of outcast from society and people don't trust them, mostly because there's still a mystery surrounding which of them was actually responsible for what happened, and of course, why they committed the crime. And so that is obviously the mystery that sort of presides over the entirety of the book, but I wouldn't say that mystery is necessarily the main focus of the story. We really follow Constance and Mary Cat and their relationship with each other, as well as some other dramatic things that happen. And the relationship between these 2 sisters is very odd, and like I say, it's almost as though they're trapped in time back from when the crime actually happened, rather than having aged naturally. I always draw parallels between this book and Alice in Wonderland, mostly just because they're both very, very bizarre and have these really weird quirky bits about them, and I just find them very odd but in a really enticing way, and I personally love this book, so I'm really looking forward to reading it again. It's another great short one, which is definitely going to be a theme throughout these books, because I feel like when I'm trying to read a lot in quite a short period of time, short books definitely help out, and this one should be a nice quick and easy read, especially because it is a reread. But I'm really excited to get back into it and also to see what everyone else thinks of it, because like I said, it's so odd that it definitely divides opinion. So around this time last year, I actually gave myself a fun and quite impromptu Halloween-themed 24-hour readathon, where I decided to see how many Stephen King books I could read in 24 hours. It was such a fun challenge and such a great proper introduction into Stephen King, because prior to that I'd only ever read The Shining, which I really, really liked, and then also The Outsider, which is one of his more recent books, which again I really, really enjoyed, but I hadn't really delved that far into his works, but I knew that I wanted to, and so during this 24-hour period I really threw myself into it and managed to complete 3 of his books and also make a start on a 4th. Those books were Pet Sematary, The Running Man, and also Carrie, and then the one that I made a start on actually happens to be now my favourite Stephen King book, and that is Misery. Now, I had such a good time during this 24-hour readathon last year that I decided that I wanted to do it again this year, absolutely, because it was just so perfect. I managed to do loads of fun Halloweeny activities like watching some horror films and also carving pumpkins and reading lots of horror books, and it was just so much fun and such a great challenge. So I'm definitely going to be doing it again this year, but I know from some comments that I got on that vlog last year, and also comments I've gotten when I've mentioned Stephen King books throughout the year as well, that a few of you would also like to join in with this readathon. So, with that being said, I'll have a little mini announcement here, but I will be talking about it in vlogs as well. But essentially, I will be hosting my annual Stephen King 24-hour readathon this year, starting on Friday the 23rd of October and going through until Saturday the 24th of October. I personally find that 24-hour readathons work best for me when I start at around 8 PM on the Friday night, do a few hours of reading before going to sleep, and then go through until 8 PM on the Saturday night. That just works best for me, and of course you can tailor it to your own time zone and just make it work for you. But essentially that weekend between the 23rd and the 25th of October is when I'm going to be doing that Stephen King 24-hour readathon. So if you would like to join in with me, then absolutely feel free to pick up some Stephen King books during that weekend, and we can sort of push each other through, motivate each other, and read some Stephen King together. It's not going to be a very intense readathon, it's basically just chill out, take it at your own pace, and read whatever books you want to read, but I am going to be doing that readathon regardless on my own on those dates, starting at 8 PM on Friday the 23rd and going through until 8 PM on Saturday the 24th, so if you would like to join me, that would be wonderful. And like I said, I will talk about this more in the vlog that will be going up on Friday the 16th, so you can get a little bit more information there as well. But with that being said, I of course have some Stephen King books in this TBR. So the first one that I'm picking up is one that I always forget is a Stephen King book. It's a really, really popular film, and it's one of those films that is just so iconic that you don't necessarily think of the fact that it's actually based on something else. And then when I remember, I'm like, I absolutely have to read that book, and that book is The Green Mile, which, like I've already said, is based on a film which I think is incredible. It's such an emotional film, and I think it's going to be really interesting because I feel like this is one of Stephen King's maybe less scary books that still deals with the paranormal, and I feel like it'll be interesting to see how he makes the paranormal sort of work within this book without necessarily being terrifying, but being sad and scary in a different way. So I'm really looking forward to delving into this one and just seeing what it's all about, because I know the film is so impactful, and I'm really interested to see how I feel about the book, because I know that sometimes the adaptations of Stephen King's books aren't necessarily all that faithful, like things like Shawshank Redemption, and kind of took the premise and then kind of ran with it and created something different. So I don't entirely know whether the book and the film are going to be all that similar, but either way, I'm really, really excited. And then the other Stephen King book that I'm definitely going to be trying to read during that 24-hour readathon is this Bazaar of Bad Dreams, which I just fell in love with the cover of because it's so enticing and like bold and unusual for a Stephen King one, because they're usually so dark. But this is a collection of short stories, which I think is going to be really great because they're usually quite quick to get through, and it is essentially a really, really terrifying collection of short stories. The blurb says, "There is a treasure here for every reader, a man who keeps reliving exactly the same life, repeating his same mistakes over and over again, a columnist who kills people by writing their obituaries, a poignant tale about the end of the human race, and a firework competition between neighbours which reaches an explosive climax. I made them especially for you, says King. Feel free to examine them, but be careful, the best of them have teeth." So I think it's going to be quite a dark collection of short stories, and by comparison to the other short stories of Stephen King's that I've read, which is the Different Seasons collection, which are slightly longer short stories, this one has, I think, at least 12 or 13, and they're all quite short, between maybe like 20 and 50 pages, so I think there'll be a lot of things going on. They'll be quite fast-paced, and a lot of tension and horror will be in there, which I think is going to be perfect for this 24-hour readathon. I will be reading other Stephen King books during that 24-hour readathon as well, but I wanted to leave a little bit of an element of surprise and not give away all of my reading plans. And also, Stephen King's bibliography is so huge that honestly it's really hard to narrow it down. So those two are two that I'm definitely going to be trying to get to, but there are quite a few others that I have on my radar that I'm really excited to try and read as well. Next up, we have a good old-fashioned thriller, because it just wouldn't be an October TBR without some thrillers in there. And the thriller I'm going to be picking up is Little Darlings by Melanie Golding, which has the most exquisite pink sprayed edges that I'm in love with. And I also just love the fact that the edges and the cover is so delicate and has the most beautiful pastel pink thing going on, and I feel like that is going to be so contrasting to the fact that this is probably going to be quite a dark book, and I just love that contrast. I feel like it's quite jarring and I love it. Now, as is the case with pretty much every thriller that I ever pick up, I don't know much about this one, because I do think with thrillers where you know you're going to have a plot twist, the less you know about a book, the more impactful it is going to be. So I don't know much about this book, but what I do know is that it is a thriller which focuses on a new mum and her twins, and these newborn twins are being looked after by their mum, and then she suddenly decides that someone is going to try and take them, and so she decides to take matters into her own hands and protect them by locking them inside their house. And then a detective gets involved, and I'm sure lots of drama ensues from there. And so I'm not sure if this is going to be a thriller with paranormal elements, if it's just purely going to be focused on more of a domestic style of thriller, or what. But I'm very excited to find out, because it sounds really interesting, and also quite similar to another thriller that I read recently, which was The Secret She Keeps by Michael Robotham. That was another one that kind of focused on mums and their babies and all the things that they'll do to protect them and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm really interested to see how similar these books are, because I really enjoyed that one. And then the final book that I'm hoping to squeeze into this spooky season TBR is one that I actually only added to my TBR very, very recently, and that is Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. I only added this to my TBR out of pure coincidence, but then I realised that it was just too perfect for this time of year to not try and squeeze in. And the reason I added this to my TBR is actually because it was recommended to me over the weekend. As I've already mentioned in this video, me and Jess are hosting a read-along of Rebecca this weekend, and we were asked to go on a live show on a girl called Hannah's channel because Hannah is also hosting a readathon this month called Gothtober, which is of course all about gothic books. So she got Jess and I on to talk about Rebecca, about gothic fiction, and about all things spooky and creepy in terms of literature. And as part of that live show, we ended up talking about our favourite dark books and things like that, and Hannah mentioned Flowers in the Attic. She was talking about how weird it was and how her mum had recommended it to her and that it was really like a surprisingly dark read. And essentially this is about a group of 4 children who are siblings who are essentially forced to live in the attic by their mum. They believe that it's only going to be for a short period of time, but then months and years pass and it becomes very clear that they might never get out. And then apparently there are lots of other dark things going on and lots of weird family relationships and all kinds of things. And it sounds like it's going to be a very dark, twisted and just odd book in general. And as soon as Hannah told me about that, I knew that I wanted to read it. So I actually added it onto my Amazon wish list and was going to just think about getting it at some point later on, and I didn't want to forget about it. And then Hannah, who was just so lovely, actually gifted it to me as a thank you for doing the live show, which was so kind. So a big thank you to Hannah, because honestly it was such a lovely surprise. And I will of course link Hannah's channel as well as the live show that Jess and I did with her over the weekend, because it was such a fun discussion about things like Rebecca and gothic fiction and all kinds of other stuff, and you should definitely check it out. But essentially, thanks to Hannah, I added this book to my TBR and I'm now extremely excited to read it as soon as possible. So there we have the 6 books that I'm hoping to read during the next couple of spooky weeks that we have ahead of us. And of course, if you'd like to join me for that Stephen King readathon, I will leave some information in the description box down below. Like I said, very chilled out, very casual. Join in if you fancy. I'm really looking forward to it. But aside from those Stephen King books, I'm also looking forward to reading all of these other books as well. And if you've read any of them, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if not, I'd love to know what books you're trying to read throughout this next little bit of spooky time that we have going on. So I really hope you've enjoyed hearing about the books I'm hoping to read soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.